Hi, I'm Angelo. I've been a bouncer for nearly 4 years now, and I just want to give some of my thoughts on alcohol laws and the restrictions on alcohol, the regulations. In Virginia, where I work, the ABC regulates alcohol. They're the Alcohol Beverage Control or something like that. And so if you want to buy liquor in stores, you have to go to their stores. In each state, they have some different, I believe, state government controlled company that sells alcohol. People tend to think, okay, well, alcohol's legal. Marijuana, if it's going to be legalized, should be like alcohol. It should be regulated like that. Or whatever other drugs, cocaine, LSD. I think that no, it shouldn't be regulated like alcohol, because alcohol's regulated like a fucking mess. The basic problem seems like a few things. For one, we don't treat people like adults. Here in Virginia, there's a law that all bars have to be closed with every drink off the table by 2 a.m. So if you want to keep your bar open past that, you just can't. It's the law. For some fucked up reason, it's a crime to have your bar running at 2:30 in the morning. And of course, why is that? Well, it's because it's a legacy of the prohibition laws, where alcohol was almost totally outlawed. It's hysterical Christian groups that think drinking is bad. It's probably the police too, who don't want to have to be policing people and coming out of bars beyond 2 a.m. in Virginia. In other states, you can keep bars and clubs open later. When I was in Chicago and Illinois, the club stayed open till 5 in the morning. In Maryland, where you can drive just about 20 minutes from where I work in Virginia, or you can take the metro or taxi or Uber, bars can stay open till 3 in the morning. So why do we outlaw keeping your bar open past 2 in the morning? Hey, I'd be happy for an extra hour of work. Now, we also have in every state, and by counties too, sunshine, or like it's called like sun-up laws, sundown, whatever, meaning you can't sell alcohol in stores past a certain time. So even like 7-Eleven, if you want to go there and buy beer, in Virginia at least, I don't think you can do it past midnight. And there's a certain time in the morning that they are able to start selling alcohol again, or CVS or grocery stores, beer and wine. They don't sell liquor there. They only sell liquor in Virginia, I believe, only at the ABC stores, which are again the state government controlled liquor stores. So of course it's pretty nice that the government gets to control flow of alcohol from there, and they make their sweet money from that. But why in the fuck can't other places open liquor stores if they want? I know the argument, oh, it's got to be controlled, we can't just have anybody going anywhere and doing it. But we only say that when it seems like the reality we have is invisible. In other words, there's nothing we can do, nothing we can change it. Hey, that's just how it is. You don't want just chaos, right? You don't want people selling liquor on the corner and selling liquor out of toy stores and liquor or next to toy stores or fast food restaurants, except it's bullshit. Of course people can drink anytime they want. What the fuck kind of law is this? Where, oh, you can't buy alcohol past midnight. Oh, you alcoholics are gonna think twice before you go buying liquor. Of course not. They're just gonna buy it earlier. In the bar too, there's laws on how much you can serve. Now, I think limiting serving people is a very good idea. Even if there weren't any laws on this or any kind of legal consequences, I think we should keep serving people in the bar I work at least the same way we do now, which is if we think they're too drunk, we're going to cut them off and we may tell them to leave. They just got to go sober up. We're not going to serve them. If they come in and they appear drunk or high, we're not going to serve them either. We're not going to allow them in. There are laws saying, like, if you give too much of a serving of alcohol, if you don't control the portions and pace it, they're all a certain amount. I had to study it before I became a bouncer, although I was never serving alcohol anyways. That's illegal if you violate those rules. Now, the only reason that stuff's really there, if you really look at the consequences of it, it's not to make people more responsible. It's not to keep societal ills of alcoholism gone, because of course anybody can go get drunk if they want. It's not hard. It's the fact that the police are going to be able to keep tabs on you, and the ABC and the fire marshal are all going to be able to regularly watch your business and basically know, hey, you're a good neighbor, you're simpatico with us, you support us, you're going to work with us and abide by our rules. That's it. Now, it's not the most heinous thing, because for the most part, yeah, we're just running our business like normal. But it's so screwed up that basically it's like we have to be chummy with the mafia in a way. Like, we have severe liabilities for overlooking those rules, or even mistakenly, like if somebody comes in with a fake ID and if I don't spot it, there's potential penalties for that. And it's so screwed up. It's basically there so the police and the ABC have leverage to shut your business down if they believe you're not strict enough with the rules. And there are bars that won't be strict enough and horrible stuff happens. But see, people don't get creative about how to control that. They just think, well, you either need the police come in there being able to arrest people and crack down on the business and shut them down and put everyone out of work, or it's just going to be chaos and people can do whatever they want. There are other fucking ways, and people, again, they just see it as invisible. In other words, it doesn't appear at all as a problem to them, so they don't know what the alternative is. They just think, well, it's a fact of life. I can't do anything about it. And, you know, the reality is, like Jordan Belfort says in Straight Line Persuasion, we take these things for granted, and then they become part of the story we tell ourselves about why we can't have what we want and why we can't construct a better vision for the future. I mean, there's so many more creative ways to be able to regulate alcohol, I'm sure that people haven't even thought of yet. But it doesn't have to be police power, police sanction, ABC control. Oh, and how convenient for the ABC that they get to rake in billions and billions of dollars from alcohol sales. And they're so worried about the evils of alcoholism, people getting drunk and abusing their spouses and whatever. But still, somehow weed isn't legal. Somehow other drugs like cocaine, heroin, yes, they do very bad things, but alcohol does horrible things to people. And you can better control it when it's legal and when people treat it as a health problem and not a crime problem. In Europe, you can take your beer out from the bar and go drink it walking down the sidewalk. Here, you can't do that. We got to stop you. Again, we can't treat people like adults. We have to act like they're all children. And why? It's because the police don't want to be out having to police people, having to actually do their job and watch them carefully. I'm not talking about every police officer. I'm talking about the power structure that institutionalizes this belief. And of course, we have to abide by that. And I don't give a shit if you want to walk out of the bar with alcohol. But of course, I have to enforce it. So I have to tell people, don't do that, because then the police will have more reason to start looking into what we do. They'll have more reason to start doing compliance checks. And if they catch you on anything, again, the fucked up thing is, it's like this cozy relationship with the mafia. As long as you're getting along with them and behaving well to them, they won't bother you. Even if you do have violations, which virtually everyone does. It could be something very, very minor, by the way. Some minor health code violation. It could be like dirt on the floor or something, whatever. I'm not talking about anything nefarious or anything that's like a business trying to take some bad shortcut. But the fact is that the police can use that, and the ABC and the fire marshal can use anything they want to screw over your business if they believe that you're not quite supportive of them. Especially, God forbid, if you as a bar started, say, putting out messages speaking out against this crap, against this daddy government that wants to tell you what to do, be in, check in at a certain time, don't drink too much, don't walk out on the street with a beer, don't buy it after midnight, don't buy it before church opens, all this crap. How screwed up is that? But so if you get along with them, fine. But if you want to speak out or anything, oh man, they will have the perfect opportunity to shut you down, basically extrajudicially, meaning they don't have to find you guilty of a crime. They can do stuff to screw with your business, like take away your entertainment license. So you can't have entertainment anymore, like game nights, like karaoke, like other events there, like live shows. You won't be able to do that, and it'll screw over your business. Now again, it may be something that's your fault, but there are more creative ways to deal with that. You can do things to bring attention to these problems that are more dynamic, to getting better management, whatever the case. Instead of basically just, if you're here working or running a bar, you be good to us, the police and the alcohol regulators, or you're out. They can also do things like reduce your capacity, meaning the fire marshal sets how many people are allowed to be in your bar. So you may have a capacity of 500 people you're allowed to keep in the bar. But they can change that. They can reduce it, they can increase it, And so think about what kind of perverse like relationship that sets up where you have to behave well to them. Basically, it's like there's this unsaid agreement. It's kind of legal bribery. Again, not the worst thing in the world, but what fucked up world do we live in where this is what we're concerned about? We have so many huge problems in this country. We have such huge unemployment, medical bills that bankrupt people. We have such chronic drug problems with people, and yet this is the fucking thing we waste resources on. And meanwhile, we just constrict where jobs can go. Because I'd be happy to work an extra hour at my bar if we could stay open till 3 or 4 or 5 or whenever. I'd be happy to have more coworkers working with me if we could get more customers in, if we get it advertised differently, if people could walk out onto the street with alcohol without being hassled and me telling them no, they can't do it. And some people don't even know they can't. We have people coming in from other countries, like from England. They tried coming in with open bottles of wine. I said, well, you can't have that in here. You got to throw that away. What is it about Europe that they can do that and we can't do that here? Oh, society's going to fall apart? Oh, if we keep our bars open till 5 a.m. like Chicago, you're going to give civilization here, what, another 5 or 10 years before it all collapses? I'd be happy to have more transparency with who runs bars. How do you run them? How do they serve there? As it is, again, it's basically, you don't need all that. You just have to be cozy with the regulators and with the police. And this isn't an anti-police or anti-regulation screed. It's just providing challenges to things we take for granted as far as what can be done about alcohol problems. Even drunk driving checkpoints. This is so fucked up. You can stop anyone for any time at those. I even question whether we should have the same penalties for drunk drivers. And people are going to harp with this religious fervor about, well, drunk driving is a horrible evil, almost like every drunk driver is a murderer or something. And the fact that people do die from drunk driving and have horrible, horrible life-changing injuries from them isn't something to be ignored. It is horrible. The question is, what do you want to do about it? You want to punish some guy with or woman with horrible penalties and help deprive them of work and thousands of dollars because they were driving without their headlights on and they were driving over the legal limit for alcohol when they blew a breath test? There are probably more creative ways to deal with that than just basically trying to destroy someone's life. There are better ways of making people learn than just raking in tons of money. And on top of that, again, the liquor stores. We talk about jobs here. How the fuck much more money could be made and businesses that could flourish? And again, it's not that I'm just pro-business for business's sake. Not at all. How many more jobs could we have? How many more better jobs if people were able to sell alcohol at all hours? Or let communities more control them the way they want? You can have much more managed, in fact, much more highly regulated, but in a dynamic way, in a healthier way, than bringing down police power and ultimately having a regulatory agency that's kind of like, again, it's sort of like this cozy relationship with the mafia. Like, you do what we like and we'll overlook your problems. You don't do what we like, we'll scrutinize you and possibly screw over your business for the smallest thing. So along the lines of controlling your capacity for how many customers you can have at any given time, they can bring that way down too if they want. And then people are going to be pissed off because there's a line out the door of people waiting. And not only that, the way you can get your capacity reduced can be from a complaint from a neighboring bar that doesn't like you or doesn't like you taking business from them. They may say some complaint. They may send in the fire marshal there to say, well, we got a complaint that you were doing whatever this violation, you were doing something you weren't supposed to, you're being too loud, whatever it is. You're sending people over here drunk, I don't know, whatever the case may be. They send a complaint, and essentially they're able to use that to say, well, they're not competing fairly with us, so therefore the fair thing to do is to get the fire marshal in and work to shut down your ability to serve customers. We have all these problems with unemployment, with high medical bills, with problems with alcohol, and we don't choose healthy ways of dealing with them that are dynamic and transparent. Instead, we basically rely on police power to correct it. It's such a crock, it's such bullshit. Imagine how many more jobs we could create, quality jobs, good jobs, and businesses that could actually have a direct connection with providing stuff people want if they were allowed to sell the type of liquor they want, because certain types of liquor you can't sell You have a lot of trouble selling them across state lines. You can't sell them in certain ways. You can't sell them certain hours. Imagine how many of those problems would be cleared up if you could just do that with alcohol. And we started treating it not as this taboo thing, but as something to have a healthy view of, a mature adult view of. Not this bullshit they try and scare you with in school. There's so many more healthy ways of treating alcohol than the way we do it now, which is basically police power. Bring in the cops, shut it down, screw over a business. And it's not that businesses are good. I'm very sort of against saying it's screwing over businesses, because there's nothing inherently good about business. A business may be running horribly or doing shady stuff, or for instance, allowing in people and letting them get too drunk, and then fights break out and the bouncers are too rough with people and people get stabbed, people get killed, people get shot, all kinds of stuff like that. It's the problem is, again, that's sort of neither here nor there in a way. It's the fact that the control of alcohol is basically a police power, and it's not creative, it's inflexible fundamentally. And it's basically, you be cozy with the cops, you can get away with a lot of stuff. See, it's not that I'm even saying bars deserve the benefit of the doubt or anything like that. There may be some way of selling alcohol that people like that totally disrupts bars and upends their businesses and gets them all to fail. That's fine, it's neither here nor there. I'm not picking like who's good and bad. I don't want to put that in anyone's heads, because I don't believe anyone's fundamentally good or bad. I'm just challenging like the approach and saying, okay, here's all these challenges for the way we treat alcohol now. Here's all these questions, and there's never any one answer. There's always sort of more questions about how can it be done better. Anyone who thinks they found the answer probably hasn't found the answer, because you should always be searching for an answer. And of course, there's the huge lawyers' fees, liabilities, all that crap. You can sue anyone for anything. And I'm not saying necessarily that lawsuits are frivolous. I'm saying that even that should be more healthily looked at. The fact that, for instance, you can be sued in a bar, that's part of why they're so worried about liability and letting underage people in or letting people in without IDs, is the fact that you can be sued for so much. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to be sued. Probably they're protected from a lot of things they should be able to be sued from. But we don't take a healthy approach to it. So it becomes this like all or nothing thing where, again, it's basically as long as you cozy up with the regulators, you're good to them, you basically obey the rules, but that's always sort of like, the rules are always something you can sort of look at with a sideways glance, because it's not, the laws really aren't there to make sure that you're responsibly serving alcohol. That may be a good byproduct from it in many ways, but ultimately it's about making sure you're treating police and regulators well. And the police have treated us well, by the way, for the most part, although for some fucked up reason, the two guys who sucker punched me, and I gave the police video of it on the Super Bowl 3 years ago, and I gave them their names, where they worked, their pictures. They never followed up with me on it, even though I called them, even though I tried to get a response from them, nothing. But for the most part, the police have been very good about helping us out and treating us nicely, and they don't hassle our customers. Like they won't arrest people for drunk in public unless they like absolutely have to. Mostly they'll just send people in a cab, even if somebody's belligerent with the cops. So I really appreciate that. You know, not all cops are overzealous and want to crack skulls. A lot of them do really just act like concerned citizens unless they have to arrest people. Point is, we have to look at alcohol like adults. We have to look at drugs like adults. We have to look at how people operate and how businesses operate in a mature way with clarity, not this hyperbolic, fear-mongering, exaggerated way. Basically, politicians and lawyers have the ability to manufacture, who stays in business, who doesn't. I'm not saying, again, I'm not saying the businesses should have any more control in a way of what they do. I'm just saying there could be a much more transparent relationship with them and between the businesses, the bars, the alcohol sellers, the liquor stores, and the rest of their communities and societies, so that they are very responsible. And if that connection is ever severed, if they aren't really serving people and treating them well and being responsible for what they do, then they get the consequences for that. Right now, the consequences are all over the place and scattered and distributed and distorted, so it really doesn't work out that way at all. And one more story about that. In Montgomery County in Maryland, the county owns all the liquor sales. So you can imagine how screwed up that is, meaning when they want to give out licenses for other people to sell alcohol, are they really doing it in the public interest, deciding, well, who's going to be a good business and sell, or are they worried about who's going to hurt their bottom line and who's going to take money from them? If people want to sell goddamn liquor, let them do it. If they do something wrong, if they rip someone off, if they cheat someone, if they steal whatever, then get the police involved to apprehend actual criminals, not decide, well, you can't sell alcohol because we decided it's not in our noble-minded search for the public good, and therefore you can't do it. So, of course, the liquor board sells it, which is a problem for Montgomery County because they keep winding up short in tax collections. They could get a lot more in tax revenue if they let motherfucking people sell alcohol like adults. They only sell certain hours. They only have certain stores. There could be a lot more jobs, a lot more businesses flourishing, in which I am not pro-business. I just want people to be able to problem solve creatively and find solutions. Businesses aren't the answer. It's just creative solutions. Business may not serve what people want, and they may be detrimental to people. And of course, there's the screwed up reality of drinking age laws, which barely prevents underage people from drinking. It's such a crock, and a 20-year-old who's going to turn 21 in 3 weeks is no different from someone the day after they turn 21. They should be able to drink if they want. Let communities decide more dynamically whether they want to let people drink at a certain age. I mean, let them decide that stuff. Again, Europe, how long do you give that whole civilization there before they collapse? Because they can let, say, 16-year-olds drink. Or they'll, I don't know if they still allow it, but like my mom said, children would drink wine when they were kids. How long do you give them before the whole thing comes crumbling down? But no, we can't do that because we're worried about people suing the alcohol manufacturers. And I'm not saying they should be immune from any kind of lawsuit. I'm just saying we need a much more healthy view of how we distribute power to lawyers, to politicians, to the police, to bars, to liquor salespeople, all that kind of stuff. So getting back to Montgomery County, okay, I mentioned the drinking age laws. Now they made it in Montgomery County in Maryland, so they have to ID everybody who comes in to buy alcohol. It doesn't matter if you're 80 years old and you have white hair or no hair, they have to ID you. What indignity is that? That's actually the part of my job that I like least. I don't mind arguing with people and fighting necessarily. I don't want to, but I'll do it if I have to because I can do it with respect. To me, when you check someone's ID, it's a violation right there. You're asking them to show you their information about where they live, their full name, their height, their weight. What the fuck is that? Why do we need to check that on people, to have their ID out? And again, it's just to make it easier to manage people, where they move, how to control them. It's so screwed up. And it's a disrespect to people who are obviously older, who don't even need to show their ID in the first place. They say supposedly in Montgomery County they're doing it because they don't want somebody to get offended. Say like a 35-year-old comes in, you can kind of tell they're a little older, they have lines on their face or whatever, and you don't check their ID, but you check the next person who may be 29, but they look really young. And so supposedly so you don't offend them. And that has some truth to it. People do get like offended when they're like, why didn't you check that person? But why not deal with the actual problem, which is checking people's IDs like they're checking in like fucking criminals? You know, we don't have to do this to people. It's such an indignity. I can't stand it. It's violation of privacy. Let people come and go where they please. And that's another thing. It's hard for businesses to be able to discriminate who comes in and out. So part of that's understandable, obviously, because businesses may have very ugly reasons for discriminating, racist reasons, whatever. But ultimately, you can't deal with that with the law. I mean, it's good to have the law. You have to be able to change people's minds to deal with that. You have to be able to shift their view of others and of the world, and hopefully make it so that they want to treat people well and please people. But checking their IDs is such a waste of time, and it only leads to arguments. That's where a lot of arguments happen, is at the door. When I have to check someone's ID and they're pissed off or whatever, and or they don't like it, they don't have it, and they obviously should be able to drink there, but we have to be strict about checking their IDs. It's such a crock. And some places, like I've worked in other counties where we had to be even stricter about that because there were less bars in the whole county. And so the police, they know at any given time, like all the bars that are open. Whereas, say, another bar I work at in another county, there's so many bars up and down the street, like the police aren't going to be able to as closely monitor you. So we don't treat people like adults with alcohol. If we legalize other drugs, they should not be regulated like alcohol. They should be regulated a lot more transparently, and we should treat people with dignity. And this is something that deserves to have people's input, because we all take it for granted and nobody talks about it. How many more quality jobs could we have? How much more impact could we have on communities if we could sell alcohol responsibly, sell it across state lines, sell it to people who are under 21? If you can do it responsibly, why the hell not? We have so many problems with how we treat this, and there's so many potential upsides of treating alcohol responsibly, with clarity, with level-headedness, without fear-mongering. My problem is the concentration of power, which makes it so that it's not fundamentally transparent how businesses operate, because they have to be cozy with the fire marshal and with the ABC, and they don't always have that direct connection with making sure they're being responsible with people, with the consumers, with their community. And people take it for granted, and they can't see what a huge difference it would make in the world if alcohol was treated more responsibly. How many more jobs could be made, how much more money people could make, how much better off we'd be, how much better treatment could possibly be, how much better we'd understand how to prevent drunk driving, how much better we'd be able to make different kinds of alcohol for people who need work to be able to find it, for communities to benefit, for the taxes to go where they need to. Instead, we have this slow-moving, like horribly, and this is a metaphor for everything, everything in the world we treat screwed up, basically. We have this slow-moving, it's like, think of it like an early prototype of a tank, like from World War I or something. A tank that not only has the treads going forward, but it has them going sideways, and like isometric, sort of whatever, this way, that way, and they're all grinding forward, but the front moving treads just grind forward a little bit faster and more stronger than the other ones, so it destroys everything in its path, but it still just grinds forward a little bit, and so we all look around, we're doing okay, and we don't understand the possibilities of clearing up all these problems we have with how we treat alcohol and how we treat alcohol abusers, and instead being able to have some clarity on it and understand, oh, we could totally reshape the world however we want to. But instead we take it for granted that all these problems are there and we just can't do anything about it. And so we look for the stupidest, most asinine, cumbersome, backwards solutions to everything. So back to the metaphor, like with a tank, it's like people see that tank with the treads going forward but also going directly sideways, sort of partially forward, partially backwards. Maybe we got one going straight into the ground. And people see that and don't ever think, well, we should just get rid of all those other treads and just have it move forward and design it better and create a better engine, more comfortable, burn less gas, all that stuff. No, instead they think, well, can't do anything about those treads. That's just, how else are you going to make a tank? Nobody's seen a tank without all those crazy treads on them. So all we can do, maybe make the front moving treads dig deeper into the ground so it can pull itself forward more, or maybe make it a little more powerful, or front load it more. That way it'll help push it forward. Nobody thinks fundamentally how to change things. They don't use their imagination. And again, that's a metaphor for everything. Nobody thinks that way about anything. We all just take it for granted. And you see, I will just point out to a few visionaries. These are people who are role models in many ways. And it's not to say everything they do is good. Obviously, I'm sure we can all think of bad things people have done, but people who created new opportunities and new trails. For instance, Elon Musk now with Tesla. Now, I've heard bad things about the workers' practices there and shortcomings, whatever. That all may be true. I'm just saying, as far as, look at how he saw the world before he was able to implement all these new battery-powered cars, and now stuff with like the energy storage at home, the Tesla battery and solar panels and Hyperloop he wants to make. So we have mass transportation that's fast and safe, SpaceX, where we have reusable rockets. We don't have to destroy a rocket and build a new one every time we want to go into space. People like John Ledger at T-Mobile, who's innovating in a cell phone service and reaches out to customers directly to hear what they want, instead of the other companies, which it's like they have the tank, like Sprint, AT&T, and Verizon, and they're not thinking take those backwards treads off and all that stuff and fundamentally rebuild this thing. They're thinking, well, okay, we're stuck this way, how can we just keep grinding along but skim a little more off the top? In this case, skim a little more off the top from customers. Not make better service, but lock them into 2-year contracts. Charge them huge fees so they can't get out. T-Mobile has no contracts, so there's no early termination fees. Along those lines too, people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, he revolutionized bodybuilding, made it a sport that went into the mainstream, became a famous actor when nobody thought he would, because he was foreign, he wasn't from America, he had a strong accent, he had huge muscles, and at the time he became a movie star, a lot of thin, smaller guys were movie stars, like Woody Allen, Dustin Hoffman, Al Pacino. And so he had to break the mold to do all that through his vision, through his belief, through his force of personality and effort. And that's ultimately all the answer is people striving to create better answers. Not this seeing things how they are and just like it's a tabletop. You put a table over it, cover everything up and say, well, there's nothing we can do. It's all just down there. We can't do anything. And we can only start right here at the table. We can't knock out the legs of the table and change things. Okay, I've gone on long enough. Let me know what you think about alcohol laws, about drug laws. That's on top of the fact that we all pay huge, huge amounts of money and huge societal costs, medical costs, all kinds of costs for imprisoning people for drug use, for putting them through the court system, the criminal justice system, for not getting them the treatment they need, for their families being without a provider a lot of times when someone who does drugs is arrested and goes to prison, for the screwed up way that drug laws are enforced, where often it's black people who are poor, often minorities, often people without good representation who get caught up in them, the screwed up way that police use informants to basically ensure that drugs will always be sold, and they just keep the informants going. So anyways, that's it. Let me know what you think.